and I see this black figure, and I see its eyes glimmering, flitting yellow, and I see teeth shining in the dark.
Even from a young age, Savannah Romero knew she had supernatural abilities. Her gift left her feeling isolated, until she got a job as a psychic medium and tarot reader at a metaphysical store in Fort Worth, Texas. There, she found a sense of belonging. Then one day, that all changed.
The shop itself was... so it was this medley of all kinds of denominations and pantheons of gods and goddesses and homeopathic remedies and items for rituals and witchcraft and all sorts of occult things, and very much a peaceful, loving environment. This woman came into the shop. She was a little out of sorts. I'll describe her as out of sorts. And she came in looking for very holy items, like Christian-based holy items, such as holy water, blessed statues, and things of that nature. And, she'd come in periodically, and I would try my best to help her find what she was looking for. She was an Indian woman, and she was from a Hindu background. And she would come in with her husband, and she would come and purchase holy items, and then immediately return them, saying that, oh, no, this is not working for me, I need something else. She was looking for a very quick fix to a problem that she claimed that she had. Her hair is something I noticed about her. Her own hair seemed to be falling away as we were speaking. And she was neurotic, almost. She kept pacing around the shop and making other customers uncomfortable. She would smell worse and worse every time she came in. And her clothes would worsen in appearance. She would have more holes in her clothes. She just looked like she wasn't taking care of herself. She seemed to be struggling quite a bit. My intuitive sense about this woman was that she was being followed by something very sinister. She had an attachment with her. I felt it in every fiber of my being. She was looking for something to remedy the attachment, and I couldn't put my finger on what type of attachment it was at the time. But I knew that it was draining her, and she was looking to ward it off. At the time, I really wanted to help her, but I wanted to keep her at an arm's length because I wasn't certain what I was dealing with. And as she came in more and more frustrated, I saw in her eyes something that didn't look human. And it felt violent. It felt insatiable. And it felt... how do I describe it? It felt hungry. One day, she came in for a reading from me. She confessed to me that she made some mistakes. And her mistakes were desecrating graves, practicing necromancy, and sacrificing animals. And I felt very uncomfortable. I was shaking, and I was almost to the point of tears, and I refused. I refused to read for her. And she became indignant and angry, to the point where she had to be escorted out of the shop and banned. And it was one of the most overwhelming moments I had ever experienced in that shop. And I grabbed one of the largest, most calming crystals that I could. I took my shoes off, I went outside, and I tried to ground myself. And I kept praying, and tears were streaming down my face. I felt so overwhelmed. I put my shoes back on, came back in, closed the shop as normal, and then got in my car and started the car. It was nighttime. Drove around the corner, stopped at a stoplight, and then I looked in my rearview mirror and saw a creature sitting in my back seat. It had a balding head. It had rotting gray flesh, white eyes, broken teeth, and a broken wave with backwards fingers. The wave the creature gave me, if I can demonstrate. Imagine your hand going back, and imagine the fingers touching your forearm. That is something I had never seen. It was grotesque, and it scared me to the point where I drove through the stoplight, I hit the gas, and I almost got T-boned by oncoming traffic. And it nearly cost me my life. Once I make it through the intersection, and I look, and I see an empty back seat, my adrenaline was pumping. And I was terrified. I had never felt fear like that in my life. I had never felt fear like that, ever. I believe the creature showed itself to me to let me know that it would follow me, and that was not the last time that I would feel or see it again.
Though badly shaken by the encounter, Savannah tries to move on, but her ordeal is only just beginning.
Afterwards, I was so shocked, and I was so shell-shocked. I couldn't tell my husband, I couldn't tell my mother or my father, because aside from my job, and aside from the relationships around me, I didn't want to bother anybody. You know, one of my worst fears growing up was being a burden, and I didn't want to risk anyone else being subjected to this creature, so I kept it inside. I didn't tell a soul.
It isn't long before Savannah is plagued by a series of troubling incidents.
I start experiencing negative dreams. I start hearing scratching in the middle of the night. I start hearing growling. Every time I'm alone, I experience something bad just around the corner, just out of my eyesight. Something always following me. I couldn't eat. I could barely sleep. I kept seeing dark shadows, and I kept hearing knocks in threes, and I kept waking up with scratches and bruises that you couldn't explain. The first bruise happened on my chest. The first scratch happened on my thigh. It started out as 1, then it graduated to 2, then it graduated to 3, and it just got worse and worse and worse. It was horrible. I was getting domestically abused by something that I couldn't see in my own home. It made me feel scared for my children, because I had 2 small children at the time, and I would pray over them night after night after night. It scared me so bad. My son would stare off into space like he was following something with his eyes. And my daughter would say, "What's that?" whenever a shadow would move across the hall at night, so they could see things, and they could hear the knocks, They would mistake it for the door, but I would hold them close and say, don't go over there. It's not the door.
As the days turn into weeks, the activity starts to take its toll on Savannah.
I continue to suffer nightmares, paranoia, family issues, financial issues. My family at the paranormal, metaphysical, all levels started to dissolve and deteriorate. As I'm working and I'm keeping my head down and I am just on autopilot, this coworker that I have starts to notice me. She was the mom of our social group, and professionally she was very nurturing and caring, and she didn't really talk to anybody other than just to make sure everybody's fed and make sure everybody's taken care of. And she starts to turn her attention to me, and she asks how I'm doing, which was very rare for people to do since I had started to decline after my encounter with the strange woman. And she told me, look, I know a demonologist, and I see that you're being affected negatively, and I think that woman had a demonic attachment with her. I felt it too, and I want you to talk to my friend. So she calls her demonologist, and we meet at the shop. And I describe to the demonologist what I had seen, from the backwards way to the broken fingers, to the gray flesh, to the balding head, to the hunched over posture. And the demonologist looks at me and says, we're dealing with Rakshasa, which in Hindu means the undead, a lower level demonic entity that is conjured through necromancy and animal sacrifice, that often possesses its victims. And when the demonologist tells me this, I shrink into my chair, and I feel like I am in over my head. I had never heard of Rakshasa. I had never heard of Hindu undead. I was raised Southern Baptist. This was a new field for me. This was a new territory that I was thrust into. So the demonologist tells me there are 4 stages of demonic activity. There is infestation, manifestation, oppression, possession. And he believed that I was in oppression. A demon will oppress a person in the hopes that when that person finally gives up and invites the demon in, it can take a person's soul. It was an overload for me, and I thought, this is real. This is happening. This is not a dream. This is my life.
Fearing the demon wants to possess her soul, Savannah tries to protect herself by cleansing her home.
I start visiting my local Catholic church, and I start stocking up like a soldier does for war. I start getting my holy water, salt, oil, and wood, and I start having it blessed by a priest in person, and then I start using it daily, around the house, on myself, on my belongings, as soon as I can, and as often as I can. My kids and my husband start to notice, and they start to question me, and I tell them it's because I want to reestablish our home as a peaceful place. I am finding my faith, and I am establishing my roots here. I am practicing my faith actively here.
As Savannah cleanses her home, it becomes clear the demon isn't going to go away quietly.
Things start getting ripped off the walls, and things start getting angrier and angrier, till finally the lights start flickering in the middle of the night, and the bangs get louder. This entity was ripping off my crucifixes. It was ripping off my rosaries from the wall. It was ripping down family photos and portraits. It was ripping down everything that I held dear to me. This entity wanted to let me know that it could still harm me and everything that I loved. There were times where I thought about calling in a priest or an exorcist, but in the Catholic Church, exorcisms have to be approved by the Vatican, and that would have taken too long. And I thought, I started this, and I have to finish it. I have to see this through.
One night, the terrifying activity intensifies to a whole new level.
It was 3 a.m, and the hall light starts flickering, and I hear a loud bang, kind of like a wake up. So I get up, and I get in the hallway, and I see this black figure, and I see its eyes glimmering, flitting yellow, and I see teeth shining in the dark, and it put its hand on the wall and scratched. It was like out of a movie, and it was right in front of my face, happening in real time. It was terrifying to see it with its claws scratching down the wall, threatening me. I could see my breath. It was cold, and I felt surrounded by freezing air, dead air. In that moment, if I felt like I didn't face this and I didn't succeed, I felt like I was going to get hurt. I felt a very real physical threat. I felt that if it moved at me or it charged at me, something bad was going to happen, and I was going to seriously get hurt. And so I grab my Bible, and I start reading verses after verses, and I grab my holy water, and I throw it as far as I can throw it. And it starts squealing. And I don't stop, and I do not relent. And then I grab my Palo Santo, and I light it, and I blow the smoke at it. And I kept that up for about an hour, 2 hours. And I kept reading and blowing and watering. As I reached Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The light in the hallway started to get brighter and brighter. It stopped flickering and just increased in intensity. And it got brighter to the point where I thought it was going to explode. And then the creature melts into the floor. And I don't see it anymore. It just disappears, and it's gone. And then every light in the house turns on. I felt relief. I felt peace. I felt like I saved my home. And I felt accomplished. I felt tired. I felt exhausted. But I won.
Exhausted, Savannah hopes that the demon is gone for good.
I lit some prayer candles, and I spent the morning praying and in prayer. And my husband wakes up, and he takes a look around, and he says, "Something's different." And I said, yes it is. And my kids wake up, and they run to me, and they hug me. And my husband comes to me, and he says, "You did it, didn't you?" I said, "Yes, I did." And from then on, we grew closer as a family. We got back out into the world. We lived as a normal family should live. At work, I reconnected with my coworkers. I started living life again. No more bumps, bruises, no more scratching, knocking. No more strange women coming into the shop with demonic possessions. It was great.
Though she survived her terrifying encounter, Savannah has a warning for others.
Dabbling in the occult and dabbling with sacrifice and necromancy may have more serious consequences than you may anticipate. Paying witches and paying practitioners for services may come back to haunt you